Are you seeing this? It feels like Bill Maher has completely fallen out with the modern left, especially since the election, and you notice that every time he locks horns with a Democrat guest. I need to show you all the times I've seen that recently, as well as give you a much longer perspective. Take a look at this before we dive in.
I noticed that at the Super Bowl, there, for the first time in I think 4 years now, the Trump administration is making them take away "end racism," which they had written in the end zone, right? And when
why? It just seems silly. I mean,
to do it or not to do it?
Why get rid of it?
Oh, I could tell you why.
I know, but it's just like you're...
Because it was stupid to begin with.
Yeah, but it's...
Let me ask you, who's it for? And if you're a racist and you see "end racism" in the end zone, you're going to stop being a racist?
But the sentiment is basically like, don't be a...
But I think it's an to nag us during a football game about something that doesn't change anything or any. If I'm not a racist and I see it, it doesn't matter. And if I am a racist, it's going to make me more of a racist.
Like, I think if you write "don't be an asshole" in the end zone, everybody will agree with that.
You know what this is? It's the bigotry of low expectations against all Americans that we've seen come out of corporate media, sports leagues, and big companies for far too long. And no, the NFL didn't remove the "end racism" message because the president told them to. It was instead a part of a broader response that we've seen from corporate America to the cultural shift with the Trump election, abandoning the woke messaging in their brands meant to get social brownie points from the far left. By the way, we're covering this culture shift like no one is, so be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to be the first to see it. Now, something that is interesting is that this shift came at a time when Donald Trump became the first sitting president to attend the Super Bowl, and while NFL may have switched to more general and agreeable messaging like "choose love," it's a snapshot of the identity politics that this corporate messaging thinks America is still caught up in. And I think that is exactly why Bill Maher is done with it himself, especially now that he's finally realized how the last presidency was basically skating on thin ice with a mentally diminished president for 4 years, and most of America didn't even realize it for the first 2 years.
Under the previous administration, we would have inquiries. We would request information. We would want cabinet secretaries and assistant secretaries and deputy secretaries to come before committee. We would send letter after letter after letter and get no response. The Biden administration operated literally in the shadows. They would not tell you anything that was going on. At least Donald Trump puts it out in the litany of orders that come out that day. Here's what we're doing today. We're going into the Department of Justice. We are taking these attorneys and they are under supervisory review, or however they choose to phrase it. You knew nothing that was going on in Joe Biden's presidency. So if democracy truly dies in darkness, I would rather have an executive tell me what they're doing as opposed to hiding it from the American people.
But for Bill Maher, this realization is still too little too late. He's in a weird spot right now, abandoned by the traditional left for his supposed right-wing rebrand and feeling politically homeless for the last 4 years. Not just that, this entire past election cycle with Joe Biden being artificially propped up for years, and then Kamala Harris being suddenly coordinated as the head of the party ticket, has made him realize just how undemocratic the Democrats really are, wielding power from behind the shadows. If you remember something pretty startling that Mike Johnson revealed a few weeks ago about his meeting last year with Joe Biden at the Oval Office, you get a window into what that looked like. He claimed his supposed one-on-one meeting with the president also included people like Kamala Harris, Chuck Schumer, and the CIA director, who even looked visibly concerned when Mike insisted on talking to the president alone. He also claimed that the former president completely forgot having signed an executive order halting the export of LNG, which is a scary thought to say the least. That's what former member of the DNC Lady Lee came out to declare, that America was under a shadow presidency under Joe Biden. And when you zoom out into the broader Democrat response to their election loss, you realize they've really got nothing to come back with other than gaslighting American voters.
A bunch of privileged mean girls complaining about privilege and trying to make fetch happen. What a shocker that the people who see everything through the lens of race and sex see their election loss as a result of racism and sexism. Yes, if only we weren't so irredeemably unenlightened, we would have elected a black president by now. Oh, what, we did? Oh, right, and then re-elected him. Maybe you missed it because it wasn't on TikTok. And sexism, Hillary got 3 million more votes than Trump, which in a normal country would be called a victory. It wasn't... It wasn't 21st century sexism that prevented a woman from being president. It was the Electoral College. Democrats run for office as if the voters don't live here, as if they don't go to the grocery store and Starbucks and the office, but they do. They live here, and they actually see women and people of color, and it doesn't look like some patriarchal racist nightmare. Kamala spent 100 days telling voters, I know it feels like crime and illegal immigration are bad, but f your feelings, look at this chart. Yes, there's a lot to not like already about the new regime, but maybe take 1 week to ask what you did wrong. The basis for Democratic campaigns has become, we're the smart people. That we know from the get-go.
Now, the best part is this is precisely the bitter reality check that Bill Maher is best placed to give to the hardcore Democrat base, and it's a departure for CNN from its usual tone-to-air weekly segment of Real Time, which the network has been doing for the past year. But we'll have to wait and see whether it's Bill that talks some sense into the modern left, or whether he makes a slow foray to the right over the years as the Democrats slide further and further away from their working-class liberal voter base. And here's some historical context from almost 8 years ago, when Bill Maher sounded just like every other tone-deaf left-wing pundit on CNN and MSNBC, ripping into the first Trump presidency in just the first 3 weeks in response to a question from the audience.
The president been in office barely 3 weeks. Why can't you guys in the media and Hollywood give him some slack? Let him do his job.
Because of what he's done and said.
It's barely there only 3 weeks.
3 weeks?
Give him a break. Can't you give him a break?
What?
Give him a
do you
break.
read
Let
the
him
news?
Do the job, which is the toughest job on earth.
The toughest job on earth has never been done like this. First of all, this is beyond the realm of politics. If you're just talking about politics, okay, let's pretend that it's just politics. I would have big problems there because it's a giant con, what he's done. He ran for the little man. And then what does he do? He gets into office. The coal companies can dump sludge in the river because, you know, that's what the little man is aching for. Undoing Dodd-Frank, because so many of the town halls in Appalachia, people were standing up and saying, Mr. Trump, please get rid of the Volcker rule. Because if I can't make certain speculative investments, it's killing us here.
See what I mean? The least change I see is that he's a lot more delusion with the left and a lot more understanding of why Donald Trump is more of a right-wing reactionary force to an incompetent and, I'd say, identity-obsessed Democratic Party in the eyes of the average Trump voter. And that racism and misogyny play a much smaller part in it, but even with that charitable reading, I think Bill Maher is in a position today to equally offend both ends of the political spectrum, and that's the best place to be when you're a talk show host. But let me know in the comments how you see him evolving politically over the next few years, because this last election has at least woken him up to the fact that he cannot blindly defend the Democrats anymore either.